Welcome back to Building and Breaking. This is Nina Kovner, and I am so grateful that you are back. Building and Breaking is where we talk about how brands are built, how trust is broken, and welcome back to Building and Breaking, where we talk about how brands are built, how trust is broken, and what salon owners, hairstylists, small business creatives, and beauty brands can learn. This is Nina. I am your host. And today we're talking about one of my favorite brands. Uh, and again, as I've shared, we're on episode 3. I can't even believe it. As I've shared, I'm going to be fully transparent when I am analyzing a brand that is a brand that I use and love or used to use and love, or if it's a brand that I've studied but don't use, or I've never studied and never used, or I've used and not studied. So, the brand we're talking about today is one that I have both studied and loved for a very long time, and that is Target. Target was one of the brands when I started thinking about this podcast concept. Target was like, absolutely, we got to do Target. So today we're going to be breaking down Target's trust crisis, not as a political conversation, but as a brand case study. I cannot, I cannot be clear enough in that this podcast is about brand strategy and how brands are built, how trust is broken, and what we can learn. So I know that there will be brands and certain topics like today. I already know some people are going to feel some type of way about it, and that's okay. What I'm always going to ask you to do is seek the business lesson, seek the brand strategy, brand story telling, marketing lesson. Uh, so let's get into it. Why did loyal shoppers like myself, who went to Target like weekly, why did so many begin to walk away? Uh, you know, we're going to be talking about the importance of lifetime customer client value, consistency, and the cost of making knee jerk decisions. And it's not uncommon. In this episode, I'm going to like compare and contrast Target and some of their missteps with episode 1, which we did on Costco, and their clarity. We're going to be talking about real life examples and how these knee jerk decisions and reactions can diminish trust and long term loyalty. So, I I've been studying, as I said, Target a long time, and really paying attention the last handful of months because it's definitely a story of holy shit, what just happened. And again, I'm going to get into it and explain why. So let's kind of context is everything, right? So let's go back to like how Target became such an adored brand darling, right? And the way that I've always watched it unfold is they took value meaning a value position, a low cost position, and made it cool. And there weren't really any global brands like that doing that at a time that it fed perfectly into millennials, uh, and Gen X. I will represent myself here, but really driven by millennials. How millennials romanticize everything, right? And how the aesthetic and all of that. They always appeared to be fun, affordable, stylish. I mean, Target, if you're old enough to remember, I guess you don't have to be that old, but I mean, Target, right? So that right there, the Target name, that nickname, that said it all, right? It was value. It was value, but it was the perceived value was much higher than the price, right? And they proudly were the inclusive brand, the diverse brand, the progressive brand. Brand promises they heavily marketed on. They championed pride, DEI, diverse creators, both ones we knew and had never known. They had such a chokehold on us that this emotional loyalty, this weekly shopping, this you go in for toilet paper and you leave with an entire new fucking living room. That is emotional. That is not rational. It's not practical. It's emotional. And I mean, that was a big part of the storytelling around the Target brand. And that's what built that really strong, high lifetime customer value. Lifetime customer value or lifetime client value is the amount of happiness, joy, referrals, and revenue that customer or client brings you over the lifetime of your relationship. So, what happened? What happened? And usually when we're talking about trust, we're talking about building trust and eroding trust. It generally doesn't happen overnight. It's not typical that it happens overnight. It's little cracks in the experience. It's the little inconsistencies that aren't necessarily, again, this like super obvious thing, but they build up over time. They build up over time. And one of the things that I started to notice, and this was before the pandemic, is the inventory started getting a little wonky. Uh, they seem to be stocked inconsistently, and that's always a reflection of a bigger problem, right? When we think about inventory management or anything, right? If there's like all of a sudden there's like, oh, there's like I can't find this, or oh, there's none of that, or oh, this is always out of stock, or oh, that shelf looks really empty. Something must be wrong. So that's a signal. That's a signal. And consumers start to create stories again, even if it isn't obvious at the time. It starts to build these like, so, oh, I wonder what's up there. Interesting. So, I mean, this podcast is not about inventory management or supply chain or any of that or operations. However, it generally goes back to some sort of leadership failure, some sort of crack in the system. Because even though systems fail more than people, when it comes to leadership, come on, like I'm sure they have like some of the top people, right? So like, what was up with the inventory? So obviously they had a system problem and a people problem. So the breaking point and what has caused this lower foot traffic, lower sales, lower value. It started when I believe it was last year when they started to pull the Pride merchandise off the shelves because of a viral internet backlash. Now, again, we're not doing extreme black and white absolute thinking here, and we are also talking in fact. We're talking in facts, and I know facts are controversial today. However, I don't do it any other way. What has happened with the internet and with social media and the media in general is that one video can go viral and then that gets fed, the algorithm feeds that, and then all of a sudden something that happened in one store in wherever appears to be a bigger issue, right? So something goes viral, algorithm feeds it, and then we're all like, yeah, Target's horrible, fuck gay people, all of that. But that's not the reality, right? That's not the reality. However, we're not living really in reality at the moment. And so Target caved. And they said they caved because of safety for the store. And look, the stores did not look safe if you look at those videos, right? People were violent around rainbows. And again, this is not what this podcast is about, but it's an important discussion around what's going on with the Target brand, which is why I'm bringing it up. So that was kind of like, oh shit, Target was like the pride fucking brand. And nobody forced them to be that. It was part of their brand story, it was part of their brand promise. And you can look at, um, again, you can look at DEI, you can look at anyone that's not a white male benefits from equality, right? Diversity, inclusion, and equity, and all of those things. So um, they're the ones that created their brand story. They are the ones that created their brand story. So when you're that person, you're that brand, and then literally you're like, oh, yeah, never mind. Trust begins to erode. They publicly scaled back DEI commitments. And again, this is not about politics. However, there is so much playing into the pressure that these brands are feeling. And again, this podcast is about how brands are built, how trust is broken, and what we can learn. So, you know, none of us like uncertainty. None of us like inconsistency. We just don't. I was talking about this in a workshop last night with our A School members, particularly in a more chaotic environment like we're seeing in the world. There's just a lot of chaos. Um, we're seeking comfort and consistency, and there's nothing comforting or consistent about a brand just waking up one day and being like, yeah, never mind. Like, wait, who are you? Like, I thought Target was this, and now I wake up and Target literally just came out and said, no, never mind, we're just kidding, LOL. That diminishes trust. The consumer gets confused, they feel betrayed, they get frustrated, and they're like, you know what, fuck them. And it's not about politics, it's about broken trust, it's about broken promises. Now, one way to illustrate this contrast is looking at Walmart versus Target. So why would we react differently to Walmart's decisions versus Target's decisions? Walmart's brand story has never been about inclusivity. Like, literally never. Their promises are low prices, right? Efficiency, mass. Like, that's Walmart. There's no, they haven't portrayed us because they didn't make any promises around that. That's not the brand story. Now, this is a good time as a reminder, brand story framework that I use is brand purpose. What problems are you solving? Brand promises. How do you solve those problems? Brand people, who you're solving problems for, and brand products and services. What solutions do you have to help solve the problems of your people? So it's about the consistency when we as human beings, as consumers, know what to expect. And we don't have to love everything about Walmart, but they didn't break a promise, right? They didn't break a promise. So we can look at Walmart versus Target. Let's look at Costco versus Target, because this is really about trust, right? In episode 1, we talked about Costco's long game, right? They've always played the long game. They've been relentlessly consistent with their pricing, membership value, employee care, all of those things, really prioritizing lifetime customer value over short-term knee-jerk pressures, reactions, noise. They know who they are because they're so clear on their brand story, and they have leadership that takes that brand story and stewarding that brand seriously. So that's really the biggest difference, right? Costco playing the long game. Target, they undercut literally everything, the foundation for which they built their brand. And then last week, the CEO finally speaks up. Here's the thing. They've been silent since this announcement, which is also not good, because avoidance increases pressure. Avoidance creates false narratives, because we as human beings are like, shit, they're not saying anything, so I'm going to make up a story in my head and then I'm going to share it with my 1 million followers on TikTok. So you can see how critically important all the time, but in times of crisis, even more so, how communication is critical. And even with his memo, whatever, to the team, he said very little. And come on, with all those high paid C suite people, geniuses, the geniuses in the boardroom, how is this even possible? How is this even possible? So, you know, again, loyalty, trust, it's fragile, right? It takes a long time to build and it can break in a moment. Uh, in that clarity and consistency of brand story, it doesn't mean you can't rebrand. You can absolutely rebrand. Doesn't mean your people are going to follow. It means you may have to get all new people. But that's not what this was. This was not a rebrand. This was a really out of alignment decision that Target made. And they are paying for it because of the inconsistency in their brand promise. So these knee jerk decisions, these, no matter how small they seem at the time, can create significant damage. I mean, I can give a couple examples right now. You have a client that misses an appointment, one client that misses an appointment, and then the knee jerk reaction is going on social media and saying, attention, effective immediately. You guys all fucking suck, and you're going to have to fill out 400 pieces of paper and give me $8 million to make an appointment moving forward. Do you see how that would be a knee jerk reaction? That's why I always talk about the importance of the pause, process, proceed tool, the powers in the pause. It's a healthy boundary tool. It's okay to get upset, but where the true leadership and brand stewardship lies is in not being reactive. And the only way to not be reactive is to take a fucking pause. The power is in the pause. So, I mean, some of the most fundamental lessons is getting clear on your brand story. That's always going to be the first thing. Really stay consistent with delivering on that brand promise. Those brand promises. Consistency builds trust, right? Recognize how important all of that is in delivering the experience, creating experience is to lifetime client value. When we think about lifetime client value, let's go back to that missed appointment example. Look, we're human. People miss shit. Even with technology, online booking, and reminders, confirmations, shit happens, right? So you have a client that has been a client for 5 years. They've sent 300 clients to you, 200, 100, 5, 10, whatever. They bring you so much joy and happiness. They're your biggest cheerleader and advocate, and they miss an appointment. That's when you take lifetime client value into consideration. You take that pause because, yeah, it's upsetting, of course, because, yeah, whatever, it sucks. But we got to take the pause because in that pause, we're going to sit back and say, oh shit, you know what? Nina has been just a dream client. I love the time I get to spend with Nina. They have contributed so much value to my business, and I'm going to let this go. That's taking lifetime client value into consideration before making decisions so you won't get into these knee jerk decisions, which can break trust instantly. Instantly. Because in that knee jerk reaction of the example of Nina, the client who has, amazing dream client, whatever, the knee jerk reaction is like, fuck you, Nina. I'm charging you $100 missed appointment fee. And it's like, oh shit. Oh shit. That was not that. Now Nina feels like, are you fucking kidding me? Are you fucking kidding me? Because remember, healthy boundaries are not walls. Healthy boundaries are not walls. Healthy boundaries are permeable. We want those integrated into our brand, as into our agreements, into our coaching, into our training, into everything, into our communications. As Brene Brown says, clear is kind, unclear is unkind. So those healthy boundaries create that clarity. So, a knee jerk reaction could be like, we are like, our whole brand is about health and wellness and inner beauty. And we get on and start shaming clients, filming people walking down the street with shitty hair. That's not consistent and aligned with that brand. So there's so many examples. But really the effective immediately, whenever you feel that, that's the time to check yourself, right? Are we reacting out of fear or are we leading from alignment with our brand? And that brand story applies to clients, brand story for teams, and tenants if you're a lease-based salon and beauty brands. So so what what does the future hold for Target? I mean, none of us have a crystal ball. Uh, I don't know. Can they repair? I believe that they could. I believe that the first step, we talked about this in last week's episode on Aveda. You got to be transparent. And you know what? It's okay for that CEO. If that CEO, that letter that they wrote last week, if that CEO would have been like, "Oh shit, we fucked up." Like right there, that's a trust builder. We fucked up. Wow. Okay. Tell me more. Tell me more, right? But they have got to do something because literally their entire brand story rooted their brand promises was about inclusion, was about diversity, was about equity, was about those things. None of us made them do that. That was on Target. Target did that. And then they literally said, never mind, LOL, just kidding. So that's the hard part, right? Have they done too much damage? I don't, again, I'm an optimist. I'm a Libra. I'm an optimist. I'm about justice. I'm about all those things and fairness and all those things. I mean, I want to believe that they can turn it around, that they can be like, we fucked up. Let's move on. We're getting back to business. I miss shopping at Target. I do. And it's not a performative thing for me. I always generally align what I invest in with my values, not in a militant way. Because again, there's nuance in everything. But, I don't talk about it. Of course, I'm talking about it on this podcast because it's relevant to the podcast. But I'm really bummed personally. Personally, I'm bummed as a brand strategist. I'm bummed. But personally, I fucking love Target and I miss shopping there. So I hope they do something, right? And then as consumers, we can decide, right? We can decide uh, what we're gonna do. So this is such an important reminder about consistency, about clarity, about long term thinking, long term building of trust, of lifetime customer value. So whether you're running a multi-billion-dollar brand or a local salon, I mean, the competitive edge is there, right? It's in the consistency, it's in the clarity, it's in the care, it's in staying aligned and thoughtful and taking that pause so you can protect and continue to build lifetime customer value. One brand promise, one aligned experience, one client or team member or tenant at a time. Simple, not easy. Do you have questions about this episode or the other two episodes, the Costco episode, the Aveda episode? I love hearing from you. Thank you so much for the emails, for the DMs. I really, it's helping. It's helping me show up consistently uh, and create these for you. So thank you so much. Again, I honestly mean that. I'm so grateful. If you have a business bestie that you believe would find value in these episodes, I'd be so grateful if you shared it with them. And if you're feeling extra generous, every time you rate or review a podcast, it helps that podcast become more discoverable. Just like your clients, when they leave Google reviews or Yelp reviews, it helps your business become more discoverable. So I'd be so grateful if you just took a moment to rate or review the pod. Um, it really can help this podcast get into the right ears, the right brains, and the right hearts. So I appreciate that. Consistency builds trust, and trust is built on those promises kept. And it's not easy. None of this is easy. And we're not seeking perfection here because that's unreasonable and not possible. But when we get so clear on our brand story that we understand the problems we're solving, we understand how we're solving them, that experience we're designing, we understand our people so well, we understand who we're solving problems for, what they value, what's important to them. And then we create those solutions through products or services. Target fucked up. And I truly hope they can turn it around. Thank you again so much for listening. This is episode 3. So we've done Costco, we've done Aveda, and now we've done Target. So we've done 3 business brands. So next week we're going to do a personal brand. And you already know it's going to be Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift is a brand I have been studying for quite some time. And I'm also a big Swiftie. So it's going to be such a rich episode filled with, I may even cry. Probably. I will. Okay. I'm actually thinking that I may start crying right now, talking about what I'm going to be sharing on episode 4. So I'm just going to stop right there and just wish you the most peaceful, beautiful day wherever you are. Remember to be where your feet are. And I'll see you next week. Bye.